Well, ladies and gentlemen, CloverWorks simply cannot go more than a season without creating something that I immediately fall in love with, like it was easy. It's just what they do. Anyway, I just checked out the first 2 episodes of the Elusive Samurai, an adaptation of a Shonen manga written by the same fellow who wrote Assassination Classroom, and let me just say, what a fascinating concept for a show, albeit probably not one that's gonna be for everybody. On paper, its plot is a historical samurai tale of war, deception, betrayal, and revenge. The thing is, it juxtaposes exceedingly brutal realities of samurai engaging in war and conquest during the shogunate era alongside highly absurd and in my opinion hilarious comedy scenes, frantically flopping back and forth between the two in what I find difficult not to call a straight up black comedy so far. This may put some people off, but I am not one of those people. It seems like a show where there's always going to be time for a joke. But don't let this convince you that the story itself isn't dark and even poignant at times. Keep in mind that this is a shonen series, so I don't know how far they'll take these sort of things, or whether they'll pull back at some point, but the series is rated R for good reason. Characters use trickery and chicanery to get the edge politically and in battle, and many of the villains are indeed quite evil. Demonic, one might even say. Perhaps cartoonishly so at times, but it's difficult to say whether that will be an issue long term. Many of the characters are lovable, many brutal and conniving, and some characters you come to care for will be leaving the story for good if the first 2 episodes are anything to go off of. But all that juxtaposition doesn't stop there. As well as juxtaposing those tones, it also simultaneously juxtaposes its animation's production values in clever ways. During poignant story beats, chase sequences, fight scenes, and all the brutal, bloody, dead murder stuff, it has all the production values and presentation one could possibly expect. Consistently looking conventionally good and occasionally spitting out sakuga that rivals anything else I've seen this year. There are occasional still shots with action lines in the second episode's big fight, but it was not near frequent enough of an occurrence to bother me in the moment, and was more than offset by the episode's best cuts. Meanwhile, comical scenes are often basically on the level of a YouTube poop or amateur animation, somewhat akin to the mix we got in certain scenes from Dungeon Meshi these last 2 seasons. You did watch Dungeon Meshi, right? Anyway, I think this element showed a real mastery of knowing when the animation is truly necessary, when they need to flex the animation, and when it would just be overkill. Scenes are breathtaking when it matters, but when the equivalent of a single GIF sliding across the screen is all that's needed to sell a hilarious joke, that's all that's there. Personally, I'm of the opinion that if you're not going to go all the way, this style of visual comedy is almost actually better than something middle of the road. And of course, I'm sure anyone can imagine what an opportunity that gives you to really go hard in the paint for the scenes where dazzling you visually matters. It also helps reassure me that they're probably not just going to blow their load immediately. The show also uses all sorts of strangely inventive, surreal, and metaphorical imagery to keep those also common random bouts of exposition between fight cuts visually interesting. But as strange as all this is in combination, the staff seem more than capable of providing the polish that is required to glue all this together seamlessly, so to speak, as one can pretty much expect from a CloverWorks anime at this point. The story itself also seems a bit absurd at times, but that's mostly because of the jolting tonal shifts between head kebabs and jokes, as well as how bubbly, reserved, or carefree many of its characters are amidst a brutal samurai war revenge story. Most of all, I am of course referring to Yorishige, a quote fake Shinto priest of the Suwa Shrine, who some might call creepy and obnoxious. I wouldn't blame you for feeling that way. He glows like the sun during our main character Tokiyuki's bouts of depression and has all the positivity and optimism that this visual metaphor implies. He also enlists what might as well be child soldiers to help in the pursuit of our main character Lord Tokiyuki's revenge mission and likely ascension to his rightful throne. These include the somewhat aloof Shizuku, also a priestess of the Suwa Shrine, as well as Kojiro and Ayako, both warriors and members of allied clans. Yorishige himself can see glimpses of the future, but they seem to always come poorly timed as like either too much info for the boy to handle at once, or just absurd, bordering useless, considering he has produced board games that should only exist in the future. Yeah, good use of your magical foresight powers, my dude. Anyway, speaking of Tokiyuki, you know, the main character who I still haven't really talked about, the next successor of the Kamakura Shogunate. I'm way into not just his deceptive trickery which mirrors the tactics of his enemies, but also his quirk of elusive evasion. He's not the hero of a revenge story because he's some incredibly strong heir to the throne. He's not very strong. He's much closer to a character like Boji from Osama ranking than any powerhouses from recent memory, though he does have it in him to do the deed, and sets himself apart in some other ways as well. Another thing I like is that he's also kind of just as twisted and flawed as anyone else here, at least so far it seems. As the fake shaman points out, it's not necessarily that he's lazy or wants to run away from responsibility, he simply enjoys eluding the enemy as he enjoyed eluding his retainers and guards. Yorishige makes the metaphor that they will defeat their betrayers in a quote, game of tag. hit-and-run tactics of sort, where Tokiyuki wears down and distracts the enemy so that his allies can find openings. He also makes note that the current main villain, Takauji, fights on the front line and conquers by seeking death, while Tokiyuki will achieve his goals by expertly preserving his own life. I didn't really know where else to mention it, so let me also just say that I'm loving the use of music and sound design in this one. Lots of expert use of traditional Japanese music and sound effects that really help sell the era, and I'd argue even the mixed tones with a playful, stage play-esque kind of presentation. Anyway, there are only 2 episodes out so far, so I'm not gonna prattle on like the wind. Let's hope it stays this good. Look forward to more All-Ya episode reviews, probably some more small first impression vids, another Crunchyroll Doom Post rant, which I'm currently editing, and as for more bigger projects on finished shows, just you wait and see, they're coming eventually. Peace.